What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And today, I want to talk about a sensitive subject, but a necessary one. And I've worded the title delicately um, because of YouTube kind of censorship and stuff. But I want to talk about depression and mental health stuff, taking away our own people, man, our own homies, right, folks from our neighborhoods. Um, recently I've had a friend that took that route. Uh, Part of the reason that I've been off the platform for, for the better part of the last week. And it, he's not the first that has ended their own journey from my circle. And unfortunately, it's probably not to be the last. And in my conversations with a lot of folks, some of the subscribers and just other people, I know that this is an issue that has touched many of us, right? And so a few things kind of upfront. I used to view people that took that route when I was younger as weak, right? As cowards, like they were broken. They didn't have the ganas. They didn't have the gumption, the fortitude, the strength to endure life, right? And so they cheated and they gave up. I don't think that way anymore. I haven't thought that way in many years. I think part of the reason I thought that way was as a defense, as a reflexive defense, right? Because oftentimes I was going through the same stuff. We were all experiencing basically the same thing, um, and and it was rough. And so, rather than take a real look at that, rather than address how abnormal our normal was, uh, it was easy to just push it off, right? And kind of suppress those feelings and just um, you miss the person, but also there's anger, right? Which is an element of grief, and so I think anger played a role in some of those situations. But I'm not going to get into details about the homie's personal situation. I'm going to speak more broadly because while this is inspired by him, it's not really about him. It's about us, right? And it's about our communities, and it's about people that we care about. And so, yes, there's a lack of mental health care. Yes, there's a lack, excuse me, of culturally competent care. Yes, there's a stigma around mental health, particularly in communities of color and lower income communities and that sort of thing. Yes, a lot of us that have engaged with mental health services didn't have the best experience, right? We've been labeled, we've been ostracized. A lot of us, there may have been attempts to put us on medication. Some folks have been on medication and it didn't do right by them. And so all that stuff is true. Um, Also, I nor you individually are going to change those systems with with the wave of a hand, right? But what we can do is influence our circles. We can influence the people around us. And that is something that counts. Waiting for the system to change, man, we're all gonna die, you know? Um, and so that's the idea of the platform, right? Help others move in excellence. I don't have all the answers. This is gonna be a fairly short video because it's more to start a conversation. Uh, Most likely on February 21st, I'm gonna be on Incredible Javier's channel for his Mental Health Mondays, and we're gonna talk about some of this stuff, right? Um, so anyways, here's some thoughts, man. Some of us work so hard to get out of the streets, right? To get out of that lifestyle. Whether people been incarcerated or not, but just the hood, right? And the hood takes on various definitions for various people, but we work hard to get out of that. And yet that doesn't always get out of us. And what I mean by that is the emotional residue doesn't just go away when we move. It doesn't just go away when we get a good job. It doesn't just go away when we get in a relationship with somebody that's, that's from a status socially that's, better than what we came up in. It doesn't go away when we become parents and we are focused on fatherhood or motherhood and everything else. That stuff doesn't go away. We get some healing, right? There's obviously some healing that happens, and that's beautiful. And there's some progress that's made. And I think sometimes for some people, there's a shame, right? Like, because we look and we think, man, I've done all this work. I've made it so far. I've I've broken the stereotypes. I've shattered the statistics, man. I've overcome. I've survived what a lot of my peers didn't survive. I've made it, quote unquote, or at least I'm closer to making it. I've done what people in my family haven't done for generations, whatever it may be, right? So, so we could tend to think that we're now immune from the realities that we experienced, and that's not necessarily the case. And so, what do you do though, right? Some folks have kind of left their neighborhood and they don't really mess with a lot of people that they grew up with. And I'm not talking about the politics, man. I'm not talking about you know uh, dropouts or they're not welcome in their hood. That's not the level that I'm on for this conversation. I just mean like, hey, I want it better for my kids, so I left maybe. And life goes on, man. And we get older. I'm gonna be 45 this month, right? So we lose touch with some people. People die. People go to prison, and we got some homies that are kind of reckless and wild, and the guys that you go to the bar and have a drink with them, man. There's a chance you're gonna end up in jail, even though you kind of squared up your life, right? Because that's just how it goes. So you avoid them, and I get that to an extent. But then where do you turn to when the demons come, right? Where do you turn to when life catches up with you? Um, when you're in a marriage and your partner doesn't quite get it, right? Or you don't feel comfortable communicating that stuff to them because they don't know that version of you. And so it's not even a conversation you want to approach, right? You don't think that they'll understand, or you don't think that they will, respect it, or maybe it'll make them look at you differently if they knew some of the stuff that you experienced. So we hold it in, right? And our peers at work or at, in our faith community or whatever, right? Um, we don't uh, we don't think that we don't want them to see that side of us, but that side is there, and it's okay. It's not abnormal for us, right? This whole normal, not normal thing is a scam, anyways. But it's to be expected, right? We're human still, and we have to be able to celebrate the changes in the lives that we make. Um, we have to be able to pat ourselves on the back, man, for progress, whatever that looks like for you. Um, while at the same time being able to reach out. And so I think sometimes people they advance so much that they find themselves on an island where nobody really knows parts of them. And then who do they get at? You know, uh, um, I got a brother that lives out of state, Chino, Montana. Shout out to him. He'll probably watch this. And he was close with the individual as well. Um, I've been through some things, man, and I've talked about that on the channel, right? And I've been close to the ledge at times. And but I can call him. I don't call him and tell him, hey bro, I'm close to the ledge, I'm gonna jump, proverbially. But I he gets me and I get him and we know each other's trauma. Uh, I have a lady now who I've known for 30 plus years. So she's aware of a lot of the stuff that I've been through, and I'm aware of a lot of stuff that she's been through, and that makes some of these conversations easier. Uh, I've also been in a relationship for a long time where that wasn't the case, right? And not to say anything negative about that person. We just had different upbringings, and and so sometimes it was hard to approach that conversation. So I've kind of seen it from both sides. I've been very critical of myself. Like, man, look at all that I've done, and yet these issues still come up, or I still have these weaknesses, or I'm falling short, or my goals aren't being met, right? And generational curses are going to wind up getting replicated now, and on and on and on. And so it's been literally life saving to have people that I could reach out to that understand, right? And they're not professionals. They don't have degrees. They're not therapists and psychologists, and but they're professionals in how we came up, and and we're available for each other. And the same for him. He's going through stuff. He's going through stuff right now. And he can call me and I answer, and I can call him and he answers. And I can safely say that just that um, has probably saved each of our life. Man, at minimum, saved us from making incredibly more poor decisions than some of the ones that we've already made. Um, and yet I know people from the lifestyle who they don't reach out to nobody. Um, they wouldn't even know how to get in touch with somebody from the neighborhood, or that's from that type of environment. And there's shame involved, right? Man, I ain't talked to this fool in 5 years, right? I ain't talked to this dude in 10 years. And I'm gonna call him and be like, hey, bro, I'm having marital problems, or hey, man, I'm trying to figure out how to be a father when I never really saw one, or hey, I'm having a hard time holding down a job, or whatever. Um, hey, past actions sit with me, man, and I'm literally losing sleep at night. So they keep it to themselves, they keep it bottled up, and that's a shame. Uh, we we gotta be able to do something better about that. And life catches up with us, man, and we get busy, right? We're not teenagers anymore running around the neighborhood. We got lives, and we got families, and we got jobs, and we got different stuff going on. So maybe we're not always as available, right? Um, and it's easy to brush off a conversation like, oh man, I'm gonna hit that fool up later. And and there has to be boundaries there, right? Like, you gotta take care of your business at home, and you gotta take care of your responsibilities. And I get that. But man, if we could be better about being there, and just listening. A lot of times that's just what it is, man, listening. A lot of times it's just somebody who knows us to remind us, man, that we're not crazy. And these grown folk problems, so to speak, that we have, a lot of us have them. It's one thing that I've noticed with this channel and the feedback I get from all over the country, and people from all different backgrounds, and even some people from outside the country. A lot of us have dealt with the same stuff, and a lot of us struggle with the same stuff. And a lot of us have endured, right? A lot of us have been through things and learned some lessons that we can impart on others, right? Or some wisdom or some perspective. Sometimes it's not just about an answer, right? Uh, it's just a perspective, seeing things in a little bit of a different way. And so it really there's not many people that could do that for us except us. So we gotta be able to answer the phone. We gotta be able to be there. Um, I've seen therapists. I've seen a psychiatrist just the other day. Matter of fact, in a Zoom call, because I'm on meds, for bipolar, and so I got to check in just to keep my meds going, and my health insurance changed. But that's not the point. The point is, I talked to her, and it was like an initial assessment, sort of, because of the change in insurance, and so she got a little bit of my background. She's like, man, you're resilient, and you've been through a lot, you've accomplished a lot, I'm proud of you, da da da. And I value those things. Like, that feedback is positive, so I'm not dismissing it. Um, but that in itself can sometimes bring a pressure, right? Like we're supposed to be past this stuff. We're supposed to be over this stuff. And especially if we have people around us that aren't familiar with that, they're like, man, just let it go, you know? Um, remember a while back, my homeboy got killed in prison, and he was my homeboy from the streets. Uh, Shout out Lil Rascal. And and at the time, I it kind of shook me, right? And my ex got at me. She's like, "Why you tripping? Like you ain't seen him in years." True, uh, but it hit me for a variety of reasons, you know. And and so yeah, it's just difficult sometimes when the people around us don't have the same experience, that they don't really have the perspective. It's not that they're wrong; they just don't have the perspective to empathize. Empathy, man, the hood is actually pretty damn good at empathy. And when Javier and I were talking, incredible Javier, about it, offline, um, he had made the point. He brought up the example of, like, when you go catch a case and do time, and it's true for Northerners or Southerners, right? And obviously I'm sure other groups too, but speaking from personal experience, him and I, you pull up, man, you get a care package right away, right? From your people, you know, uh, you're welcome, right? And obviously if you got paperwork issues or whatever, then that welcome mat might be pulled back real quick. But the point is, you understand, man, when somebody ain't got nothing and there's empathy, right? And damn, the homie pulled up, he ain't got nothing, man. Let's look out for him. I don't know him, I never met him, I don't know what neighborhood he's from, I never heard of his city or whatever, but he's one of us, right? Um, if there's conflict on the yard, it's man, I might not like this dude personally, I might not really like his vibe, I wouldn't want to be his celly, but I'm not gonna let another group segment get the best of him ever, right? I'm not gonna let another group segment discipline my people, right? Um, we'll lay the whole yard down before we sacrifice one of our own. So that there's an empathy there, right? In a way, and it's a little bit of a twisted example, maybe. Um, and I don't script these conversations, and so uh, forgive me if it's kind of you know moving around like a ping pong ball, uh, but the point is, we need each other. We can be one another's mental health team, so to speak. Uh, I'm gonna put, the hotline's gonna be in the thumbnail, and I've never called that hotline. Just to be very honest, I don't know what the experience would be calling it, uh, but it's there, right? And it beats a blank, so to speak. You know, so that's part of it. The other part of it is our own pride and our own ego. You gotta be able to reach out for help, man. I guarantee you, whatever you're going through, you are not the only person who's been through it. There are others that have been through it. And the old expression, this too shall pass, it can certainly help feel like it won't sometimes. And I get that. I've I've gone through periods where, like, what's the use, man? I'll fail, or this is never gonna get better, or I'm doing the best that I can and it's just not good enough. And so I get that mindset. I've been scared by health issues, right? I, I understand that, and I think it comes, not to say I necessarily understand exactly what you're going through, um, because everybody's a little bit different, but what we go through, you're never the only one, and a lot of that stuff comes up through relationships. A lot of that stuff comes up through parenting, which I think can sometimes hurt us even more in the sense of us withdrawing and not expressing it because we want desperately to be good at those things. And we have a very high standard of where we're trying to reach in those roles. We're very proud of those roles. We try our best in those roles. We also feel inadequate in those roles sometimes, right? We didn't come up with the tools, you know, the the examples that we saw maybe weren't the best. Um, and even if we did see good examples, that doesn't mean that it translates exactly into what our experiences are, right? And so there's could be some shame in that, like if don't want to admit that it's hard to be a parent sometimes, don't want to admit that it's hard to be married sometimes or in a serious relationship, don't want to admit that after all these years, man, it's still hard to deal with coworkers, or it's still a challenge to go in a public place, or the expectations of society just feel like it's too much, and we're playing catch up all the time, and or we struggle with issues, maybe substance issues, or just uh, hustle issues, or whatever, and we don't want to be that bad example, so we're like, oh, it'd be better off to not have my example than to have a bad one, and we could really mind fuck ourselves. You're not the only one that's felt that way. You're not the only one that's experienced that. And you're not one of a very small group, right? I've been out of prison 16 years. I'm pretty good at not going back to prison. I've been very fortunate in some situations, because that's not to say that I haven't done anything since I've been home that under the law should things have gone differently, I would have gone to prison. Um, so I've been blessed, fortunate, lucky, whatever you want to call it. But I've also been careful for the most part, and just chose to not engage in that stuff. And people will often say, "Oh man, you made it, right?" And I did, in a very narrow sense of, like, I'm a one-term dude in the adult system. Caught a case at 19. I got a 10-year sentence. I did the vast majority of that. Uh, I went for a violent crime. I went for attempted murder. I did my time with the fellas the way that I was supposed to, and I got validated, shoot program, and all that other stuff. And came home, and I didn't go back. Um, and I didn't rely on the system to help me not go back. But that's a very narrow slice of who I am. You know what I mean? That's that's not the totality of who I am at all. That's not even the majority. Um, that's not a high concern of mine. And so yes, maybe I've been successful in that way, but that doesn't mean I got this shit figured out. And uh, and so I think that's true for a lot of us. So you gotta be able to humble yourself, man, and reach out. And when you reach out, you might get a coach, or you might get a dude that's at his son's basketball team, game, and doesn't have time to talk right now. In recovery, they have this thing where they say get 10 numbers, right? Have 10 phone numbers of people who will support you in your sobriety, who who are homies under the definition that we use on this channel, right? That will help you move in excellence. And the reason you need 10 numbers, ideally, is because not everybody's gonna be able to answer the phone every time. It's just not how it works. But if you have 10 numbers, high chance that one of them will pick up in your moment of need. And I think that's good advice for us, man, for homies, for people. I think it's good advice for everybody. Um, um, my deepest concern, obviously, is for people that I relate to, or people that I identify with, just kind of culture and lifestyles and upbringing ways. So that's the group that I focus on helping move in excellence the most, um, because that's the group that helps me, that raised me, that produced me, right? And so, uh, but I think it's a good word for everybody, whether that's your experience in life or not. Try to have 10 people, and it could be hard. It can be hard. I don't necessarily know that I have 10 people, to be quite honest right now, but I have a few. Um, those few uh, don't really let me down, uh, but I should probably add to it, right? Just to be safe. And you also never know if if you reach out to somebody when they're struggling, you might help them in their struggles just by you reaching out to them, right? Because it's a lot easier to help someone else than help ourselves. It's a lot easier to encourage and give advice or just listen and be empathetic with somebody else than with ourselves. We tend not to be empathetic with ourselves. We tend to be hard on ourselves. Um, and and so, sometimes somebody will reach out and we're being there for them. And try to think, man, are you being there for yourself in the same way? Are you giving yourself the same grace that you give them? Are you giving yourself the same encouragement you give them? Are you giving yourself the same love that you're extending to someone else? Right? Because you're as worth it as they are. And and sometimes that can be helpful, helping somebody else. It's been very therapeutic for me, incredibly therapeutic for me. And so, I get more out of a lot of the community service I've done than I think even the community, right? I do my best for them, but they, sometimes unknowingly, man, they do a hell of a lot for me. Uh, it's definitely a two-way street, and it's a blessing and a privilege to have the relationships that I do. So that's it, man. I said it would be a short video. I don't know exactly how long it's been. I'm gonna be on Mental Health Mondays, I think on the 21st with Javier. So feel free to tap in there. I think it's gonna be a live, so there'll be some discussion. And tap in the comments, man, and let me know your guys' thoughts. Um, I really appreciate you guys, sincerely. I really do. Um, and I appreciate what we're building here. And so yeah, stick with it, right? Help others move with excellence, help yourself at the same time. Share this if you think there's someone that needs to see it, man. There probably is. And it's not about promoting the channel. It's, I mean, that's cool, right? Because I try to offer content that I think would help people. But it's the message, you know. And so maybe share this in your networks and see if it helps somebody, right? And I, you know, I care less they come and subscribe to the channel or not. You know, if they get some value from this, then that's a blessing. And if they subscribe, that's a blessing too, right? But anyways, like I said, help others move with excellence, help yourself at the same time, and be a homie and save a homie, man, support a homie, you know. So take care, folks.